Hello, and welcome to this course entitled Basic Sound Reinforcement and Equipment Use for High School Students. My name is Mr. Metcalfe. I will be leading this course, and in this course, we'll be learning about the setup and use of basic PA equipment that you may encounter at high school events. Today's lesson will be an introduction to the different types of things you may encounter as you enter the world of live sound reproduction. So why is this important? Well, we know that many of the assemblies that we have at the high school level involve this type of equipment. These assemblies involve movie presentations, pep rallies, sporting events, concerts, informative student gatherings, marching band productions, and so much more. Live sound is involved in just about any of those gatherings that occur during the school today. Unfortunately, there are usually just a couple of people at the school who know how to set up this equipment and operate it. So what do we do when these people are absent or unavailable? Do we cancel the event? So this course seeks to make this type of knowledge and skill set commonplace at the high school level. The knowledge presented will be taught in a hands-on approach where you'll be able to handle and manipulate the sound equipment. This knowledge is applicable to a variety of situations in your life beyond the classroom. The basic concepts that you learn here can be applied to music making outside the school in garage bands or music production. That can be applied to the installation of stereo equipment in your room or in your automobile. They can also be applied to events where you can help out at churches or music venues or clubs and help troubleshoot some of the sound difficulties that they encounter there. In a learning approach referred to as constructivism, the knowledge is provided to you, the students. You figure out the application and the value. So our introduction today is going to start out with a scenario. At your high school, the students have known for weeks that there's going to be a flex day where they get to go to the gym and watch movies and have snacks and hang out with their friends as a reward for the hard work and good behavior that they've had for the past 9 weeks. You and your friends were looking forward to this and have been looking forward to this for a long time. And of course, when you arrive at school that morning, Mr. Metcalfe, that's me, okay, the resident sound expert is out due to a family emergency. No one else at the school knows how to install and operate this equipment that's needed for the production. So without his presence, the school is considering not having the event or canceling it. Of course, if only someone else at the school or possibly even a student knew how to operate this equipment. In this course, and if this course was in existence at your school, there would be plenty of people available to pick up the slack and save the day. And one of those people could be you someday. So let's get started with a quick introduction to the type of equipment that we will be learning about. And first of all, I want to start with microphones. Okay, now microphones, of course, are used to amplify human speech. Okay, they have a top part which has a diaphragm in it that converts sound into electrical signal. And then, of course, at the bottom end of it, we have some kind of cable connection. And there are several different cable connections we'll talk about. Some of your microphones also have an on and off switch. Okay, usually up is on and down is off. Usually, one of the biggest problems that people have just getting started with the microphones is they can't figure out why the sound won't come out when all the wires are connected properly. Usually, it just comes down to making sure that that microphone is on. Now, sometimes you're also going to run across other type of microphones. Okay, some of these may already have the cable connected to them, like this one right here. Now, this type of cable connection, and we'll talk about that in more detail just shortly, is different than the type of cable connection that you might see with the ones that do not have a cable already attached. Okay, this type of connection right here is called a TRS or 1/4 inch cable. Now, this type of microphone connection, which is connected to this one that has a cable on it already, also has a smaller type of ending on it that you would find on an auxiliary cable. This is known as an 1/8 inch cable. So in the world of audio production, we have all kinds of different adapters. Okay, so to turn this 1/8 inch into a 1/4 inch, we put the adapter on it, and now it will plug into that bigger hole that's on the back of your mixer or your amplifier. Now, speaking about different cable types, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go through some of these. Now, these two connections right here, these are the common type of cable connections that you see for microphones. These are called XLR. Okay, now XLR has a male and a female end. Usually this thing right here that you see will plug into the bottom of the microphone. Okay, so here's our microphone. It's got 3 holes. This has got 3 connections. So you line those things up, you push in, and you'll hear it click. Okay, this is actually a pretty safe connection, but they've updated it since then. Okay, and of course, the sound that we've converted into electrical energy will travel down the cable and go to this part, which will actually be connected to your amplifier or mixer. Okay, so that's one type of connection. Now, earlier, we mentioned our TRS or 1/4 inch. So every once in a while, okay, you will have an amplifier or a PA system that only takes those type of connections. So like we mentioned, the different types of adapters before, okay, this type of cable actually has an XLR going to a 1/4 inch or TRS connection. Now again, just like before, this XLR part will plug right into the microphone, okay? And that will be able to be connected, excuse me for my redundancy, to your amplifier through the TRS or 1/4 inch connection. Now, as I mentioned, there's all kinds of different cables that you might run across. And those of you who are familiar with technology, and I will go ahead and say high school kids are usually very familiar with technology, have seen many of these different cables before. Like I mentioned, okay, this is XLR to TRS. Okay, this is XLR on both ends. And they actually updated a newer type of cable that's a little bit safer than the other cables that we talked about because they lock in very, very safely into amplifiers and speakers. And this is called the Nutric connector. Now the Nutric has 2 different ways of connecting to an amplifier. You pull back on this, you push this in, and when you spin it, it's going to lock in, and now this cable is going to be very strongly inserted into your amplifier or speaker. And I'll speak a little bit more on that just here shortly. Now moving on to other types of cables that you may run into. Okay, most of our amplifiers run out into these TRS or 1/4 inch cables. Now 1/4 inch cables, of course, look like this. This is your standard type of cable that you would hook a guitar into an amplifier, or you would use a higher gauge wire than this one to run your signal out from your audio mixer or amplifier to your bigger speakers. Now, here in a second, I'm going to talk about speakers, so I'll show you a little bit more about how these things connect. Okay, thank you for your patience. And as a high school student, you may have already encountered these type of cables. You know them as auxiliary cables. But if you remember just a little bit ago, I talked about this really small connector being an 1/8 inch cable. Now, it's easy to take and update these. Like I said, you can usually plug something like this into your cell phone or your auxiliary port. And if you have to run your cell phone possibly or anything else that has one of these as an out on it, if you have to run that into a 1/4 inch adapter or a 1/4 inch input on the sound equipment, then you use an adapter like so. And now you have an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch cable that you can use to run various sound sources into your different mixers and PA equipment. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you a basic amplifier. Now I'm going to keep it simple and short for today because that's a lot of information to throw your way. Now this is an amplifier. Of course, here on the very front of it, you can see how many watts it is. I think this one says it is 2,000 watts. That's what it says, okay? I don't really believe it puts out 2,000 watts because it'd probably blow a wall down if we actually use something that loud. Most amplifiers will have some kind of, they'll either have sliders or volume knobs to control the amount of sound that comes out of them, okay? And those are usually fairly self-explanatory. But really what I want to show you is the very back of the amplifier, okay? Now, right here, okay, this is a section that's called inputs. Now, when we're talking about audio signal, okay, and I'll get more in depth in that here shortly, you have a system where sound flows into an amplifier and then it goes out of an amplifier. Now, where it goes in is called an input, and where it comes out is called an output. Now, on this one, okay, we have a bunch of different options for our inputs. Okay, you'll see right here, these are the XLR inputs. So like say that I was going to connect a microphone, okay, I have my microphone connected with this part into the end of the microphone. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that again. So this will go into the microphone and connect. And this other end would plug into this spot right here and connect into the amplifier. Okay, that's an XLR connection. Now, if you'll notice on this amplifier, there's actually another set of inputs, which are these TRS or 1/4 inch things. So if you have a microphone like we did before, okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put my adapter back on here to turn this into a 1/4 inch connection. Okay, now I can take this type of microphone, if this is the only one I have, and I can plug it in to this input. Now, anytime I plug something into an amplifier, all that sound is going to go in. So if we want to get it out to our speakers, the sound has to come out somewhere. So usually when we look at the back of our amplifiers, we have outputs. Now if you look right here, okay, this one has that very special type of output that we talked about called the neutral connector. Now, a lot of amplifiers have gone to this kind of connection because it is the safest connection due to that multiple step and click. So again, I would take this, I will put it in the hole for that connector, and then I will take and click and turn it. Once it clicks, that is not coming out unless I disengage it by taking and pulling back on this little silver tab, and now I can take and turn that and pull that back out. So that's, again, why that neutral connection is preferred in the industry nowadays, because it is the safest connection. Once you plug it in, if somebody steps on a cable or whatever, it is not coming out. That's a good thing, because when things are stepped on or broken, they can lead to shock and damage for equipment. Now, like I was mentioning, other amplifiers often use the 1/4 inch things for sending the signal out. And we're going to pretend right now, I said these were inputs earlier, and they are inputs, but for right now we're going to pretend that those are outputs. So you can see how this works. So as we look at this, of course, if our TRSs are outputs on our amplifier that we have, okay, this is how you run your sound out to a speaker. Okay, so you will come out from, you'll click into your output, which means now that sound is going to run from this, be amplified through this cable, and we are going to actually look at what it looks like to connect it, excuse me, as I get off screen for a second, to a speaker. Now, this speaker right here that I'm holding in front of you has inputs. We have an input where we can run the signal from the amplifier into this speaker using a 1/4 inch cable. And a lot of speakers also have an output where I can also, once I run the signal into the speaker, I can send it to another speaker by running a cable from the out on this speaker to another speaker that has an additional input. So if I want to send this signal to this speaker, I come from the output on the amplifier to the input on the speaker. And now, as we look at this, I'm going to go ahead and use this one with the TRS connector. Let's say that we have connected our microphone. Actually, I'll go ahead and use the XLR because that'll make it a little bit simpler. Okay, I have my microphone. Okay, I'm putting my input into my amplifier. Okay, I'm sending my sound signal down my cable into the amplifier, and then, as we said, from the output and then into a speaker right here. So if I had power supplied to this, All I'd have to do is turn on my microphone, turn on the amplifier, talk through the microphone, and adjust my volumes that I showed you on the very beginning of this. And I had the very most basic type of sound system that you could have. Now there are all kinds of variations of this, and we'll get into those as we go throughout this course. But I just wanted to give you the very basics of amplifiers and speakers. Now again, that little speaker that I held right there could be used as a monitor, which is something that the musicians will keep very close to them so they can hear themselves and they know what to do. Or they can be as big as this behemoth right here, which is a front of house speaker. Now, of course, this uses the same connection. I would run out from my amplifier and into my speaker cabinet, and this will get all the sound out to my audience. Okay? So let's review everything that we've talked about. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and go through all my stuff. Our very first thing is a microphone that we talked about. Sound goes into the microphone. It's converted electronically into an electronic impulse, which then travels down a cable of some sort. That cable can have many different connections. Like we talked about, we could have the 1/4-inch connection. We could have the 1/8-inch connector. We could have XLR connections. And then we can also have the various type of connections that I referred to before, where they have done conversions. Again, such as this one, XLR to TRS or 1/4-inch. Okay. Any of those signals that we send, again, are a lot like a river or stream. That signal has to flow in one direction. Now, eventually, it may split, and that's another lesson for another time. But once you send the signal down the cable, it's going to go into an amplifier, okay? And you're usually, again, going to see that marked as an input section, okay? And then once it goes into the amplifier, and the sound gets amplified to the volume that we want, then we send it through the outputs of the amplifier and into the inputs of the speakers. Now, if you know just that basic information, then you can run any kind of public address system where people are talking to an audience. Of course, there are other applications where we could be running music through this. We could be running sound from a DVD player into an amplifier by using the audio output on the back of the DVD player, or if you're old school, a VCR, or even more updated than that, running sound out from a Chromebook, or running it out from a computer, or any of those various sound sources, CD player, MP3 player, any of those things. So there are many applications that you can have in your life. And this course will try to show you how this sound equipment works and how you can apply it to the various applications that you'll run across in your own lifetime. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this brief introduction to sound equipment. If you have any questions, of course, you can contact me at cmetcalfe@roanschools.com, and I look forward to teaching you. Thank you so much.